in this module, our main focus will be on polymorphism. So, already I discussed with you about what is a polymorphism. It is a function which exhibits different characteristics in different instances. Depends on the inputs. It's a single function basically. It's the same function which exhibits different behavior in different instances. Depends on the input. Now, commonly with this diagram, if you look into it, commonly what do we see here is the function called as speak, isn't it? So speak is the function. When it's applied to the duck, it says quack. When it's applied to the dog, it says oof. And when it's applied to the cat, it says meow. Okay. So a single function which performs multiple tasks, we can say, or single perform which takes multiple forms. That's what we call as a polymorphism. And in this we are going to discuss about overloading concepts, function overloading basically. So functions with the different sets of parameters, default and constant parameters, operator overloading, rules for operator overloading, overloading operators, overloading unary operator, overloading binary operator, overloading comma operator, overloading new delete operators, type conversions, and so on. Okay. Now let us see the what is called a default argument. Default argument means by default it will be there. That's what it means. So C++ allows us to call a function without specifying all of its arguments. So for an example, when you call a function statement, if the function is going to use 3 arguments, okay, so we can send values into the function without passing all the arguments. Okay, so having one of the arguments as default arguments. Okay, so the function assigns a default value to the missing parameter in the function call when there is the default argument is being used, and default values are specified when the functions are declared. Default arguments are useful in situations where some arguments always have the same value, isn't it? So if the argument is going to have same value throughout the execution, then you need not to send it separately from the calling statement, isn't it? So what we can do is we can use the default argument concept. Okay. Then using default arguments, a programmer can use only the useful arguments. Other than that, whatever is constant, you can neglect it. Okay, while using the functions. Now, the prototype, you can see that here. Function has a declaration like this, and its prototype. Amount is the function name, and the arguments you look into it: float, principal, int, period. Okay, float, rate of interest. Okay, now rate of interest is going to be a common parameter, isn't it? So for an example, for a year or for a month, the rate of interest will be common, or for a particular duration, the rate of interest will be common. So that is, let us say, 0.15. 0.15 is the rate of interest. Now when you pass the arguments to the function, you can see that amount within bracket, the amount is specified here 5000, 7. 5000, 7. So if you look into it, one argument is missing in this, isn't it? But still the functions will work because we are using a default argument here. Because we are using a default argument. We are using a default float rate is equal to 0.15. So when you send this 5000, the 5000 will go to the principal amount, and 7 will go to the duration, maybe 7 years. and rate of interest will be 0.15. By default it will be there. Similarly, if you take the another thing, you can, like, if you want to override also, you can override. So 5005 and 0.2. So 0.12. So in the place of 0.15, now 0.12 will be used, and calculation also can be done. In any way we can use, either by missing of the arguments or without missing any arguments also we can specify it. Okay. And very important note on default arguments. And first thing is, only the trailing arguments can have a default values. That means the arguments are the last. The argument is the last only in the list of arguments can have a default values. Understand? So here you can see that multiplies the function and it's having an argument int I, j, k. Okay, k. So now here so like this it is legal. You can say that j is fixed with the value 5 and k is fixed with the value 10. So this will be the trading, and continuously it's going to be a default. Whereas in this you can see that the middle one is made a default, which is illegal. Okay, so if it is a default, it should be at the end. Should be at the end. And also you can see that that's another legal statement. You can see that all are made as a default statement. All are made as default statement. It's like initializing the variable in the function statement only. So by using this we can specify the function call statement without specifying all of the arguments. Whichever the argument is new, only those arguments you can specify. Whichever argument is going to be constant all the time, you can just leave it like that. Constant arguments. Okay. So the constant arguments is, we can have the constant arguments. That means any functions or any parameter which is not going to be changed during the function execution, then you can make it as a constant very well. So you can see that here string length is basically a function, and it uses a constant argument. This constant is nothing but the pointer value. So through this pointer, it's going to take the constant string value into the program, and that's going to be made use. But this p will never change. This p will never change. Similarly, the int length string s, and it's again it is using the reference variable here. Okay, so as it uses the reference variable, then still it is not going to be affected because of its constant qualifier. Because of its constant qualifier. This qualifier constant tells the compiler that the function should not modify the argument. At any cost, this argument will not be modified. Whereas in default arguments, if we look into it, we can override the value or we can miss that value. But whereas in constant argument, we have to pass the value, but the value will not be changed during the execution of the functions. Understand?